quickly. Let's start there with our panel. Annie Linsky is White House reporter for The Wall Street Journal. Leslie Marshall, Fox News contributor, and Ben Domenech, also a Fox News contributor, host of the Big Ben podcast. Okay, Annie, the president's saying, hey, listen, crude oil's going. Where's the gas prices?
That's right, and he even sort of hinted that the Department of Justice should look into the companies that are not lowering these prices fast enough. That's a line that is a little familiar to us. Joe Biden made a similar threat, but I think that we have seen this president has been a little more aggressive about following through on those comments. So I know that the oil companies are listening. I had a chance to meet with some of them recently, and they're definitely listening.
Yeah, Ben, the Wall Street Journal. Oil prices are now almost back to their pre-war levels. Americans are still paying almost $1 more for every gallon of gasoline they put in their cars. President Trump is unhappy about it. Prices at the pump will likely take time to recede, even if the Strait opens in earnest, and the dynamics that determine the final price customers see are complicated. Gas station operators, whose margins shrink with quick climbs in wholesale costs, tend to lower prices more gradually while they sell expensive supplies after a shock. You know, there's a lot of nuance there. It's not easy, black and white. It doesn't fit in a true social.
No, it does not. And it's also, I think, an expression of frustration from Republicans on Capitol Hill, who I think have been trying to send this message to the White House for a while, that it was going to take some time for these gas prices to see the kind of impact that they want to see prior to the midterms. But I just want to point out what Secretary Rubio said there, I think, highlights kind of a gap in the way that this administration is messaging around this deal. His messaging sounds skeptical. He sounds like someone who understands the Iranians have lied to us repeatedly before and that we should expect that they're going to lie to us again. He doesn't put this deal into be something that has to be defended to the nth degree or even something that's sacrosanct. That's different from what I hear from other members of this administration who are just constantly cheerleading for it. I want to know what the actual feeling of the administration is. Is it that we should approach this with skepticism and hope, or is it that we should basically say, anybody who criticizes this deal, you're not MAGA anymore. You're not part of the Republican coalition.
There are a lot of Democrats, Leslie, who didn't want to go into Iran at the beginning. Now they're criticizing the getting out and the deal, and oil prices are dropping, something that Democrats obviously would like to see with Republicans.
Yeah, obviously everybody wants to be able to say gas prices are lower and take the credit for it, whether they really get or need to get the credit for it. Here's the problem, and I would agree with Ben with regard to Iran lying. What we're hearing is two different messages coming from the United States and the White House, messages coming from Iran. When you look at what is Iran saying, look, there's not going to be anybody that's going to be inspecting our nuclear facilities until we have a done deal. And they're also saying we're not going to have a done deal because Lebanon is part of this equation. And Israel says, we're not a part of this deal. Lebanon is what we want it to be, where we're concerned. So I feel this is really the dog chasing the tail here continuously. You know, every day you see something different. And I don't mean to be a real, Polly the pessimist here, but I am very pessimistic where it comes to this. And the big elephant in the room that everybody wants to talk about, if you want to talk about oil, let's talk about what Iran is going to benefit, because they're going to be able to sell on the open market. So far, they're winning without the deal being finalized.
And I asked Secretary Bessent about that, about the sanctions being lifted. He said it can be pulled back and put back on at any time, and they were already selling oil to China and others.
Yeah, I mean, the administration has made a big point of this, that sanctions can be ratcheted up and ratcheted down, and that's based on behavior. There are also some other ideas floating around with how to use Iranian money. I know that some advisors to the president have talked about using Iranian frozen assets to pay for the, I believe, $80 billion that's been spent fighting this war. So, there's a lot of, this is a moment where there's a lot of ideas floating around, and the president has a habit of listening to everybody. So when you hear one idea and think maybe this isn't going to happen, you may be surprised. It comes out as official.
He does have one idea that is stuck in his mind about the Save America Act, and that is also preventing him signing this housing bill, the bipartisan effort to get it passed. Take a listen.
Buying a home is unattainable for so many Americans. Is this election legislation more important to you than resolving the housing crisis?
This is every election is important. We're doing very well.
What he said is that the Save America Act is exponentially more important than the housing bill.
Donald Trump just doesn't care about the cost squeeze on American families.
So he decided today not to sign the bill. There was a ceremony set up. He didn't sign it. He went to Truth Social before going to Capitol Hill, saying the Elizabeth Pocahontas Warren-centric housing bill, which is of minor importance compared to the lower interest rates and even FISA, pales in comparison to passing the Save America Act. That is what Americans, both Democrats, Republicans, and everyone else care about. Get the bad Republicans to approve it, or better yet, terminate the filibuster and approve it. Everything else Republicans have ever dreamed of. Ben, this caused a lot of consternation and chaos on Capitol Hill. They've worked a long time for this housing bill. It's going to become law if he doesn't sign it in 10 days anyway.
Yeah.
What's your
President's sending a message. He's sending a message that I think is consistent with what his base and the base of the Republican Party says, which is that they want this passed. And you can talk about the filibuster being a restriction to it, but virtually every Republican voter that I talk to believes that Democrats are going to do away with the filibuster anyway, and they believe that this is more important. The president happens to line up with the Republican voter. Surprise, surprise, when it comes to this perspective. I am not surprised at all, and I think this is only going to continue in terms of the rest of the year as we see this play out in the Senate.
Do you think Democrats, if they got control, would immediately get rid of the filibuster?
No, not necessarily, because there are certainly some, older Democrats that are young enough, that are old enough, I should say, to remember when there was a time. Yeah.
I mean, just on the Republican side, there are several Republicans who will vote against that because they believe the Senate is operated differently and it should continue that way, and they're holding that line.
Right, and Democrats are as well. But I do want to say, with regard to the SAVE Act, he doesn't have the votes. Without a filibuster, he doesn't have the votes, and he's being tone deaf, and so are Republicans when it comes to the American people. 83% of registered voters say that housing and affordability of housing are, if not the number one issue for them as voters, it is a top issue for them as voters. This could help Republicans in the midterms. The president should have signed this. He could take a victory lap. He could have helped Republicans in the midterms. This was not a wise decision. I'm sorry, President Trump, you're wrong on this.
I just think that the president's going to hold the line on something that he believes is an actual existential threat to our representative democracy. And that is why he backs the SAVE Act, and it's why I think he believes that if you got rid of the filibuster, that the handful of Republicans that it would take to get it across the finish line would hear it in their ear every day from their constituents to get it done.
I mean, there are two sides of this. There are some Republicans who say he's shooting himself in the foot. This is an affordability question to Leslie's question, and it could be really good to just take a victory lap. The other side is he's holding the line. He's fighting for something that MAGA voters really believe in, and it's going to pass anyway into law, whether he signs it or not in 10 days.
There's a third thing, too, which is, quite frankly, I mean, this is an impressive piece of legislation. It's very important, but most of housing costs are decided by regulations at the local level. And so, you pass something like this, and it's passed by a big bipartisan way, and if you make a big deal about it and then housing prices don't suddenly go down, that turns voters off. And the bottom line is, federal policy isn't really the driver of costs. There are plenty of things in here that obviously people from both parties really liked, and it's a very good thing to run on for sure politically. But policy-wise, I mean,
all right, last thing, Ben, you put out on X, Mamdani's socialists upset incumbent Dems in House primary sweep. The Democratic embrace of Muslim socialist agenda happened so fast, most of America didn't even notice.
I just think that the logo of the Democratic Party should be a hammer and sickle, a box cutter, and an American flag that's permanently on fire.
I mean, is it
that's
catching?
That's what this is. I was interviewing a senator today, and he told me definitively, Zohran Mamdani is the heart and the brain of the Democratic coalition right now. It's not Hakeem Jeffries.
Quickly, because I got to run.
No, I don't agree with that. You remember the Tea Party was going to take over the Republican Party? No, they're a faction of the Republican Party, and so are the Democratic Socialists. What people are hearing is not Democratic socialism. They're hearing affordability, and I'm going to give you free child care.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
A little sunny day. Up next, we'll take you to the other side of the National Mall.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.